And we have one of our special episodes of Life of a CISO where we're bringing on world-renowned thought leaders in cybersecurity to be able to share their perspective on cyber, how they got in, and give you real practical advice that you can use to enhance your career and your life. And today it's a great honor and privilege to bring on Jane Frankland. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My friends, I hope you know what time it is. It is time. It is time for Life of a CISO with yours truly, Dr. E is in the house. And we have one of our special episodes of Life of a CISO where we're bringing on world-renowned thought leaders in cybersecurity to be able to share their perspective on cyber, how they got in, and give you real practical advice that you can use to enhance your career and your life. And today it's a great honor and privilege to bring on Jane Frankland. We were just talking before the show. I think we've talked and known each other for probably 10, 15 years, and her name always comes up in conversation. She's one of the well-connected thought leaders in this space. So Jane, welcome to the show.
It's so good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
And I can sort of go on with some of your accolades, but I always find it sort of better to give your perspective. So can you sort of give the listeners a little bit of sort of what you're doing today, your specialty in cyber?
Yeah, so I've been in cyber for 28 years plus. I came into cybersecurity, not that we called it cybersecurity then, we called it information security or IT security. And I've been in the industry for 28 years, and I came into it by building my own penetration testing company. So my background was not tech, like most people in the industry, certainly of my age. It was art and design. So I always say I came into the industry by falling in love, not necessarily with cyber, but actually with someone who was technical. And we started a company, and because I didn't really know anything about technology, the two things that interested me were cybersecurity and AI. And that's so interesting right now because of where we are. But way back then.
So that was 28 years ago was AI?
Absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
It's kind of funny, isn't it? But, in those days, in the late 90s, AI was just too new. It wasn't feasible to really begin and start a company doing AI. So I really found security interesting. I thought it sounded really cool. And it was feasible. So I started a company with someone I was in love with who became the father to two more of my children. I've got 3 children. And we built this phenomenal, very pioneering consultancy, security consultancy, which then went on to specialize in penetration testing. So I owned that for 16 years, very much a pioneer, very much a challenger by nature. So always looking for something that is going to challenge me and stretch me, and also something that's really meaningful as well. And certainly security ticks the box, for those things. We, especially right now, we couldn't have anything, I think, that is so important other than security. It's a really interesting time, I think, to be in the industry.
And now, what's your perspective on pen testing today? Because I sort of hear different things where some of the folks are like, it's sort of commoditized, and with all the automated scripts and everything, it's not really as much a human. But then I hear other people that is as much a human component and need. So where do you see, like, if somebody was looking to start a business, would penetration testing be a good business, not a good business? What would sort of be your recommendation?
I think it depends on the technology that you're using. Personally, I chose not to go and do a repeat of my last company because, if I think about a decade ago, it was really difficult to actually start a penetration testing company. I think it had become quite commoditized, so nowadays, I think that's even more so. I mean, if I think about when I started my penetration testing company, there literally were a handful of companies that actually did that. And then when I came out of that field, there were they were probably verging on 100. Now it would be hundreds. So I think it's really hard to differentiate yourself and to potentially provide something really meaningful for your clients. So especially with AI. So I wouldn't advise anyone to necessarily go and start a penetration testing company, but it really does come down to what you want. So do you want to build an asset and go on to sell it, or are you looking for a lifestyle company? Because having said what I've just said, there are plenty of companies out there that need hand holding and they need help. So certainly when it comes to assessing your vulnerabilities, penetration testing still can be extremely valuable, but I think there's an awful lot of other things that you need kind of wrapped around it.
And I agree completely. Is if you just sort of lifestyle want to make, a couple hundred K and have a few clients,
Exactly.
you could
Yeah.
probably carve out a
Yeah.
niche. If you want to build a multi-billion-dollar company with an 8 to 10x valuation, probably not the right industry to go into.
Yeah, I would agree.
So sort of on that twist, what would you recommend as sort of a good area? Because I know we have a lot of security folks that have an entrepreneurial spirit. If they were looking to start a company, do you have an area that you think is sort of high growth and sort of still blue ocean?
Well, I think when we're looking at CISOs, so many CISOs right now are pretty fed up with the situation. It is high stress.
Well said. Well said.
It is high stress, and it's high burnout as well. So if I think of CISOs that I know, so many have actually called it a day. They're fed up with the reporting requirements. They're fed up with not being able to actually get on and do the job that they absolutely love to do. They're fed up with having that stress and that risk and that burnout, never being able to switch off, having all of that liability. And so what I've seen many of them do is either they go into consulting roles so that they can actually say cheerio to the liability that they're faced with currently, or they start up their own consultancies. And that could be as a virtual CISO, or it could just be a general consultancy practice. And I think there's a lot of value in doing any of those things. So again, it comes down to what's your preference, what do you want. You still can make some good money by starting your own consultancy firm and building something quite substantial. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are so many good products out there that you can recommend to your clients and provide that value and really help them to reduce the risk that they're facing and enable them to bounce back, when they are attacked. So it's about as much resilience and bouncing back today as it is about protecting and about compliance, because compliance is not the same thing as protecting your organization and bouncing back. They're quite different.
And I think that's well said, where there's a lot of great products, but people don't know how to use them.
Yes.
This is sort of one of those, if I had to go back in time, and I'd be interested in your perspective, I always said I want to be vendor agnostic. Yes. So I would never team up or endorse or do anything with vendors. But then I have a lot of friends that went the value added reseller, the VAR route, and their companies are worth a lot more than mine, but they are biased. So where do you see with sort of consultants being vendor agnostic versus teaming up with vendors?
I think you can actually do a little bit of both, actually. I mean, if I go back to my penetration testing company, when it first began, it was a value added reseller. So we were providing, my business partner and I were providing solutions to our clients, but we were still quite vendor agnostic. We would tie into certain products that we believed offered our clients the best protection and defense, but we kind of used our intelligence to actually go out there and look for them. So it was a little bit of both. I think it was more of a narrow pool, I think, rather than pure vendor agnostic. I mean, that term is used so much with vendor agnostic, and I have yet to meet a company that actually is vendor agnostic. They're not. They usually have a limited product portfolio to choose or to push, whichever way you want to put it.
And also, what are your thoughts on sort of the big players versus startups? Because you were right. There's a lot of people, and what I'm finding is, if you look at your really big players, I mean, like your Palo Alto, Cisco, there's so many resellers, it's much harder. But what I found is working well is almost teaming up with like either venture capitalists or private equity and getting involved with these
Yes.
startups where then they're very small. Now it's
Yeah.
riskier, but if they take off, you're going to get a much better because you're going to be one of their few as opposed to being one of many. What are your
Absolutely.
sort of thoughts of going after the stable versus
Yeah, I
small?
mean, I think that's an absolutely fantastic strategy. The other strategy I think that's really good is to start local. So that's what my business partner and I did when we were first starting our consultancy. We actually started with local companies, so small businesses. And it's very easy to kind of go after the bigger companies and think, well, your business is capable of helping them and providing the solutions and things like that. But you need to have a bit of a track record, and you are a risk to any company working with you, whereas the local ones are a little bit more tolerant. So I think it's easier. I always recommend when companies or like CISOs are starting out building their own consultancies or their virtual CISO practices, start local and really hone and get specific on your value proposition, your key differentiator, what makes you special. Why do you do what you do? Why are you unique? Why should I come and partner with you and buy from you? What makes you special? Why should I trust you? More than anything. And I think when you're doing that on a small business local basis, it is still quite easy to do that because people like to buy locally. They still like to buy locally. It's safer. The perception is you're not far. I can pop down the road, or you can just pop in your car and come and see me on premise, as opposed to doing everything virtually. So the perception is still that it's safer, and you've still got that relationship, which I think really means a lot to companies and buyers, maybe more so in today's age, with AI than ever before.
And one of the things I'm big on the show is people love saying things. And I always ask, is it an empowering truth or a limiting belief? Right? Because a lot of times we have limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
And I know one thing I hear a lot is, well, small companies don't have money. They don't have budget. They're not going to buy security. But it sounds like you found that sort of a limiting belief. So can you maybe comment
Yeah.
on how you were able to penetrate that space?
Yeah. What I see when it comes to small companies I see some small companies actually just bury their head in the sand, and they don't actually want to acknowledge that they have an issue. And it's still this whole thing of, I'm not attractive to a hacker. It's not going to happen to me. So really, when it comes to those types of companies, I would say don't waste your time on them. There's no point trying to convince them. Your job is to go after low hanging fruit. So it's actually to get in front of companies who really do understand the threat, and then to position yourself so that they get what you do. So it's really about not wasting your time more than anything. And when you go out and you try and educate, that's a slow burn. It really is. You can have a few of those on the go, but you're gonna waste your time, and you're also gonna jeopardize your business, in my opinion. So when I go back to starting my consultancy, I did that. My business partner and I did that, and we tried to educate, and we would bang our heads against a brick wall, and that cost us a lot of money because the companies aren't buying from you. You're trying to convince them the whole time. And so what we did was we changed our tactic, and we went after those companies that really did get what we did and did value what we did. So it's like, okay, now you understand why we are supreme at what we do, and you are operating at the highest level of risk, and you understand the differences between the providers out there in the market. So therefore you get what we do, and you also are prepared to pay for it because you understand the differences in regard to the companies out there in the market. So we weren't having to compete on price. We were just having to showcase our unique selling points, and in some cases prove it, which we could do technically. So get us in front of anyone in a meeting. We were doing research, which wasn't being done at the time, and exposing vulnerabilities and things like that. It was fairly easy for us, but we really understood what our clients wanted and who our clients were. So I don't like the whole education aspect of it when it comes to building a business. I mean, what I do is I do that education piece. I do the awareness piece, but I'm a thought leader and I'm an influencer in the market. So I'm paid by companies to help them educate the market. And those companies are great, big, massive brands like Microsoft or Intel or MasterCard or Palo Alto or BlackBerry or Commvault, yada, 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 and so on. So it's really different. They have that available cash to be able to educate the market. They've got that time. Yes, they need to make sales and they need to grow their revenue and things like that, but they have time. Whereas when you're starting a business, and particularly when you're doing it organically, you've got, your salary to cover, maybe a few other people's salary to cover. You need to make sales quick, and you need to make those sales quick, and you need to invoice quick and be paid quick, which is very
You need the
different.
cash.
Exactly. So it's like every company that I've built has been organically grown, and it has been about selling. It's about selling and getting the cash in fast, as opposed to let's go out there and let's pitch a VC or an angel and get some investment in. And I've not even done that at the later stage. It's always been about organic growth, and it's been lifestyle company, or it's been like, let's build something with view to exit, asset building and exit. And sometimes it's worked and sometimes it hasn't. But what I do know, what I've just said, to be sound business advice. It really is, whether you go down that VC, because VCs want proof. They want to see revenue growth.
Yep.
It's very rare that you're going to be able to start a company unless you've got a track record of building companies and selling them and being profitable right from the word go. Companies, VCs, angels, they want to see you put money in your own pocket, and they want to see that you've got business. They want to see that you've got customers. They want to see that proof that you've got a viable business before they put money into it, by and large.
We are very similar. What I always tell people is, if you can't grow the company to 5 million organically, a VC is not going to help you. You're just giving away too much of the pie. And a great example is, I recently had some conversations with Jeff Bezos, and a lot of people don't realize this and he sort of regrets this. When he was starting Amazon, he needed some cash. And in the beginning, he took $1 million.
Wow.
And because the company was only valuated at 5, he gave away 20%.
Wow.
Imagine owning 20% of Amazon today and giving only $1 million. I mean, it's sort of like almost highway robbery. But he was like, if I would have known how big it was going to grow, and I would have just sort of raised it, or friends and family, he could have a much bigger share. Now, granted, he's still one of the richest people in the world, but still giving away 20% of your company for $1 million is sort of silly. So yeah, I'm sort of on that game. But I guess the question is, sort of once you're up and running with it, you sort of get the momentum. But how do you get those first, like, what would you recommend if somebody's starting off? They go, Eric, how do I get those first 5 clients? Because you're right, you don't want to knock on doors and be forcing people, but how do you get them to come to you and see the value? Because I'm right, with all our customers today, they call us, we don't call them, because they know our value. And I sort of forget how I got started. So any advice on how to get started, how to get those first 3 to 5 customers?
Yeah, so I would say it's a case of inbound and outbound marketing. What marketing people called inbound and outbound. It's literally working every single avenue, I would say. So you've got your whole online presence. First of all, you've got to know who you are, what you do, your values, and things like that. So what makes you unique, your key selling points. You've got to really understand your client in depth. I mean, that's the most beneficial thing that you can do. Who are you selling to? And you need to have a PhD in their problems and also their aspirations, which many people actually don't understand they need to do. Where are they now? And where do they want to be? Because when you can do that, it means that you can sell to them more effectively. And nobody likes to be sold to, but everybody likes to buy. So when you can actually talk about the problem that they are facing, that can build trust. So the better that you know them, the problems that they have, the challenges, and where they want to be, their aspirations, the better you're going to do. So you've got to really understand that first and foremost, who you're selling to. Then you've got to understand yourself. Who are you? What do you want to be? What makes you unique? What about your values? And then you need to go out there and let other people know about this. Now, one of the easiest ways to do that is online. You can do it through storytelling, through posts, through videos, whatever really I think is your I would always say, use what you're skilled at. So if you're a writer, go out there, and the majority of your time should be spent writing, because you're also going to find others that like to consume things that are written. If you like to do videos, then go out there and do videos. You can still use multiple channels out there, from YouTube to TikTok to LinkedIn and Twitter. It's not Twitter anymore, but I don't use it. Um,
Yeah, actually,
exactly,
whatever the new name
exactly.
is before
So
before Elon takes over
exactly,
the universe,
yeah.
right?
I mean, there are so many platforms out there. Or if you prefer to do things that are more auditory, go out there and start a podcast, a listening kind of like
Yeah.
podcast platform. So I would use that storytelling and having that ability to tell stories and to get your point across with a call to action. So what you want them to do next, so where are they going? Where are you taking them to? You've got to build the trust. I mean, last time I looked at this, we were looking at 11 touch points, and literally before any buying took place. I know that has risen. I don't know if it's like 22 or more. I can't actually remember what that is, but the work that you have to do nowadays is so much more than it was certainly when I started a business like 28 years ago, when you picked up the phone and literally pitched someone, can I come and do a meeting and get in front of you and do a presentation, talk to you, find out about you. And then it was a case of, okay, let's put a proposal together and let's do business. It was so much more simple in those days. Nowadays, you've got to jump through so many more hoops. And you've also got to, the smaller the business, the easier it is to get a sale. The larger the business, the harder it is, and the more time it takes, because you've got bigger buying centers. What do you call them? Not circles, but groups, buying groups. You've got bigger buying groups. You've got more people involved in the buying decision. So you've got to go out there and make sure that you understand what it is that those people are looking for, and make sure that they are on board with you, or at least know that they're not, and be able to kind of circumvent them if need be. So who's on your side, who's a sponsor, and who's effectively a bit of an adversary. So you need to understand that. And then you need to go out there and you need to work things outside of the online aspect. Yeah. So go out there and do the networking, find out where your customer is hanging out. Are they going to networking events? Are they on the golf course? Are they doing something else? Are they out there climbing, a mountain or whatever it is? Are they at your school, your kids' school rather? So you really need to understand, where are they? And you need to be, as I say to some of the people that I work with, you need to be fishing where the fish are and where they are hungry, because a lot of people will fish where the fish are, but not where they're hungry. So you need to make sure that you're out there understanding where your buyers are, what their needs are, what their aspirations are, and putting yourself in front of them. And that also could be in magazines, it could be in in a newspaper, it could be on a TV show. All of these different platforms and places. Buyers can hang out. Your buyers, your target buyer can hang out. So you just need to literally stick yourself in front of them and make sure that you can communicate effectively and succinctly, who you are and what you're about and what it is that you do and how you can help someone to take away the problem, the challenge, that frustration that they're having right now, how you can solve it.
Yeah, there's so much gold in that answer. I'll sort of summarize a few points. One is, for some reason, technical people, when they hear sales, they get this negative connotation. But what I always tell people is, if you're sick and go to the doctor and they want to give you a prescription, you don't fight them. Right? They're technically selling you, but you are so sick that basically you're looking for a solution, whatever they provide. What if that's how you approach sales, where they were so in bad shape that essentially they needed it and you're solving the problem in such a unique way? And then the other thing I just want to emphasize is the importance of non-digital.
Yes.
Like, everybody wants to go on Facebook and X and all those. But what I found to be the most effective is, when I travel now, I actually sort of, at my billboard, right? So I just have my logo, and on airplanes and elevators is you have an audience for 30, 40 seconds. 90% of the time people be like, what's Secure Anchor? And I basically say, oh, we're sort of like cyber health checks, where we're the doctor for your network. Your network's probably sick, or your data's sick, and we'll help heal it. And then I have a brochure that's just a trifold. I hand them the physical brochure, and then they leave the elevator, I leave the airplane. We've gotten more business that way than we have with all our social media ads and everything else. So sometimes old school works the best.
I love that. That's so good. I always say to people, sales is about helping. If you like helping people and you are selling ethically, then you can do great work by being in sales. Sales is about having a conversation. So it's marrying the two. It's about having a conversation. It's about helping people. And that's all there is to it. And most people, if they've got a problem, they like that to be solved. And if they like engaging with you, if you make them feel safe and secure, because that's what it's also about, then you're going to do well. And the other thing I also say is, I often ask people, what are they selling? Talk to me about what are you selling? And they'll give me an answer. It's this, it's that, etc. The thing that you are selling is confidence. That is what you're selling. So make people feel confident in you and your company, that you can solve their problem and you'll do business. And build it on relationships. There's nothing, it's old fashioned, it's old school, but everybody likes that relationship, don't they? It's just like, I'm picking up the phone, or I'm typing out an email, or I'm, on a Slack, or wherever it is, WhatsApp, and I'm communicating with someone who I trust, who I know has my back. They want me to do well. So I'm going to work with them because I know they've got my back. I know they care about, me and me doing well. That's what it's about. So it's not necessarily about, who's got the best, who can protect and defend, or even enable that resilience. It's like, have you got my personal best interests at heart? And if you can demonstrate that, and you're going to build a wonderful relationship, and you're going to do really, really well.
Yeah. That's what I always ask new team members. I'm like, what are we really selling? Yeah. And they're all like, oh, you're selling security assessments or expert witness or health checks. And I'm like, get on a sales call with me. And we'll get on a sales call. I'll close a deal and I'll ask them, did I even mention cybersecurity? And they say no. And they're like, how'd you close the deal? Because we're selling peace of mind. We're selling confidence and trust. And that's what you have to realize is, you could be the best technical person in the world, but if you're not giving the person the assumption you got their back and can help them, you're not really gonna get that sale. And I know we have a few minutes left. I just want to make sure we touch on this, because I'm so impressed when you say you've been doing AI for 28 years. Wow. And I just want you to comment, because a lot of people are like, oh, AI is brand new, right? AI is this new emerging, but really we finally have the data sets to support it. So can you sort of talk about how you saw AI evolve over the last 15, 20 years and where you see it going in the future?
Yeah, well, I would say, I've not been in AI for 28 years. So I've been in cyber for 28 years. So 28 years ago, I was interested in AI because I thought it was a really
interested. Hey, that's just as good. That means it existed, right?
It existed. The AI has existed for 75 years, since Alan Turing.
Exactly.
So it's been around for a long time, and it's gone through, ups and downs, and those, it's stagnated for periods of time where it's not advanced as quickly as some of the VCs have wanted it to. So we've had that stagnation, and then there's been an injection and a leap forward. So it's interesting. It's really interesting to see how it's evolved and where it's going. And right before we got on and started to press record for this podcast, we were talking a little bit about it and where you were going to ask me like where I saw it going. Is it a good thing, a bad thing? There's always good that can come from something, and there's always bad that can come from something. When it comes to AI, we have so much opportunity, but we have so much at risk. And where I am with AI and humanity, I'm really concerned. I'm really concerned about where we're going. I really am. And, I'm really concerned for humanity and our planet
and that makes two
now.
of us.
I really am deeply, deeply concerned. And I think we are, when we're being in cyber, we're so attuned to risks. When you actually move outside of cybersecurity and you actually talk to normal people, then they kind of sometimes can see you as a bit of a weirdo because you are so wired to risk. You're so attuned to it. But we see so much more than most people. We read so much more. We hear so much more. We're so much more attuned. And I really am deeply concerned about where we are heading in terms of technology, in terms of AI, in terms of cyber, in terms of cyber warfare. I think humanity is at risk, and it's almost like everywhere you look, humanity is at risk. When I look out, I've got 3 kids. My eldest is in his 30s, the other 2 are in their 20s. I look at what they have to do, how they have to navigate the world, where they are struggling, even in terms of relationships, and it's almost like every single place you turn right now, humanity is under threat. We have a crisis on our hands, climate crisis, a tech crisis. Within the tech is obviously AI and cyber. It's deeply concerning. You look at obesity, for instance.
Yes.
And the health of humans. What are we feeding ourselves? How are we working? What is that doing to our minds? How are our minds suffering? There's a report that came out recently, and it was, my daughter keeps citing this, and I have looked at it, and it's something like when you take a break from social media for a couple of weeks, just the
maybe a couple months, or even for most people, just try a couple of hours. I don't think most people can go.
What it does to your brain, how your brain regenerates, from having that break away from technology, that downtime. Our brains need to recover. So it's just like every single angle I see, I look at, it's just like humanity's at risk, from the burnout, from the health, from the population, from kids not wanting, and I say kids, I mean older kids, like, actually looking at their life and questioning, can I have a family? Do I want a family? Can I afford a family? So what that does, obviously I am talking about the Western world because that's a Western world issue, and in some countries it's the population growth is not an issue, but for us it is. And same with like health from an obesity level in the UK where I'm from. It's one of the fastest growing challenges that we have, health challenges that we have in our country when you look at Europe. So I'm deeply concerned about where we're going. Let's put it that way.
And that makes 2 of us. And I always love leaving the show on a little bit of a cliffhanger. But for those out there in cybersecurity, CISO, this is the challenge. We need to all join Jane, myself, and others is really spreading the word and helping people recognize what the real dangers are out there. Jane, it was truly a pleasure. The time flies way too quick, but really appreciate you joining me. And for those listening, thank you for listening for Life of a CISO. Make sure you follow Jane online and make sure you follow me for future podcasts. Thank you so much. And until next week.
Thank you.